He started at a Verizon kiosk. No college degree, no investors, no playbook. 14 years and 7 companies later, he had built the #1 wireless store in the nation. Moved a VC-backed startup from Seattle all the way to a small town in South Dakota, and then helped build a go-to-market strategy for Chewy before it went public. He also hit a wall so hard he had to walk away from founding entirely for 3 years. And what he learned might be the most valuable lessons he shares today. My guest today is David Woodbury, and this is Startup Stories from the Treehouse. David, welcome to the podcast. I appreciate you making it.
Yeah, awesome. Great to be here, Todd. I'm happy to share some insights and maybe experiences and challenges I've had in the past.
Well, you have quite a background to get through. So I think when I was looking through and doing a little bit of prep for this, I think you've done like maybe 7 companies, exited 4. You've been a mentor at Techstars. I think I even read something about like moving a startup across the country on a bicycle, which is kind of fun. And so maybe talk to me all the way back to the beginning. So like give me the synopsis of David's background and how you got to where you're at.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess I'll start way back. 9/11 happened. I joined the U.S. Coast Guard. So I'm a U.S. Coast Guard veteran. And then after that, I'm from Minnesota originally, and I was looking for schools with reciprocity to Minnesota. Black Hills State was one of those schools, so that's how I ended up out in the hills. After the Coast Guard, I joined Black Hills State, ran track, played football there, and fell in love with the hills. And met my wife there. So literally fell in love there. So, and then from there, the job market was tough back then in the early 2000s in the Black Hills. So I left, joined Verizon Wireless, and worked there for 3 years. I was the top sales manager in the country for Verizon in 2007. Realized I didn't like the corporate life and started a franchise store in 2008. And so from there, I built over 3 years a 18 store, north of 8 figures in revenue franchise business with over 100 employees. Wow. We ended up getting acquired by one of the largest Verizon premium retailers in the country. That acquisition all went through between 2012 and it was a long acquisition. It was like 18 months long. Wow. But it was fully finalized in 2014. At that point, I knew I didn't want to work in retail anymore. It was a lot of nights and weekends and challenging employee roster. Yeah. And so I was looking to reinvent my skills in digital. And so I built a cause marketing concept with a couple of guys. And then that sort of morphed into a digital agency. And from the digital agency, we started working with early stage startup accelerators. So like Techstars, 9 Mile Labs in Seattle, Generator in Madison, Wisconsin, sort of all over the country. And we would go in and do go-to-market early stage, go-to-market strategies for startups. Seeing that sort of inspired me to start my own concept, which Camp Native was like really the first tech startup that we brought to market. And that was a campground booking engine or a booking engine for campgrounds and RV parks, one of the first ones that was built. So we were pretty early to the market. They were still, the market was still using like Excel sheets, phone and paper to take reservations. And then we ran that for 7 years, and that got acquired by a private equity group out of Canada. And then built an adult diapers e-commerce company. So was shipping product across the Atlantic Ocean, vertically integrated with a German manufacturing company. So they were like the main venture partner. Unfortunately, that one went under during COVID because we just lost our supply chain. We couldn't get product into the U.S. Yep. And the main manufacturing here in the U.S. is owned almost exclusively by Procter & Gamble and Kimberly-Clark. So getting into that, the only solution was a wholesale channel. So it put us out of business from a margin standpoint. And then, worked with multiple startups where we had sort of studio concept where we owned a small percentage of equity, would support them. Had another one that was acquired called Endurelite that we were part of, which was a supplement company. And then our agency ended up effectively merging with an agency in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which brought me from the hills where I live now in Grand Rapids, Michigan, with a company called the C2 Group, which is focused on enterprise development. So really big customers like state customers, enterprise, FinServe, etc. I did a 3-year deal with them and exited after 3 years. And then I'm currently building a startup inside an existing agency called GTU out of Detroit, Michigan, and also looking at founding. I took a hiatus from founding startups intentionally, but I'm looking at founding a new startup now as well. So
that's good. And so, like, I think wasn't Grow Army the one you're working on now, or is that you're going to talk about that in a little bit?
Yeah, that's sort of the brand new concept. It's only about maybe 6 weeks old from ideation to where I'm sort of formulating, ideal customer profile, who we're going to go to market with, potential partners, product development.
Sure.
And all of that, of course, is like changed, building software for the past 10 years. It's just wildly different on what you can do and validate from a customer standpoint than what you could do 10 years ago. I remember like building Camp Native, and I think we were $250,000 in before we even had a demo in front of a customer. And now it's like for $300 of Claude credits, you can have a demo ready to go. So, yeah.
Yeah, we just did 3 hackathons across the state, and I was just amazed at what people are getting done in, 2-3 days, right? And so it's fun to see. It does create its own set of challenges, but it is a different world.
It is. I think it's really great for startups. You can go really fast with things. It's easy to hit plateaus, and I think that's a really interesting thing in the startup space too. Is that we all deal with the speed to market is really exciting, and then you get to a point where it plateaus out, and it's a big challenge, I think, for founders and for companies to figure out how to push through that.
Yeah, and I think I just even wrote an article just today talking a little bit about some of the decisions. Like we have this whole thing about no black boxes, where basically good founders at least have a working knowledge of every aspect of their business. And I think that there's this tendency now with AI and specifically coding, where it's like, I got a whole bunch of stuff done. I'm not exactly sure what decisions it made architecturally for me, and where I'm going to have limitations. And so that plays out over and over across your business. Everybody comes with some domain expertise, but making sure that you understand some of the decisions and implications that happen, super important. Which kind of goes to your point, like those are the plateaus where you made a decision, you have to live with it.
Right. And I think now there's not a lot of excuses not to have data around your decision-making processes, which is part of what I'm trying to build for startups and small businesses is know your data, know your scorecards, know your industry, know your customer, know how to get to them, and know how to measure the impact. The future of work is changing as we speak right now.
Yeah, no question. So maybe talk a little bit about super niching. Like I think I've seen some of that in some of your comments and LinkedIn posts and stuff. As I was talking about before we started, we are like huge into getting into small beachheads and really creating focus. I think it's the idea of who the persona is that's going to buy. You can understand from a competitive standpoint, but like maybe you've done this multiple times in your career, and so this isn't like lip service. This is actually going after very specific niches and opportunities. Talk to me a little bit about your philosophy on this and why you think it works so well.
Yeah, I think I'll start with the mistake I made, which was sorry, I've got like some glare here, but. The mistake I made with Camp Native was really going too wide right out of the gates. So we built a database of like 14,000 campgrounds, RV parks, and we went after all of them. Our competitor, who effectively has like won the market now, they're still operating today, Hip Camp. They took a very niche approach with unique properties, more of like the Airbnb, like somebody has an apple orchard and they're going to set up a few like interesting spots there. So you had a private camping experience. And that has been extraordinarily successful, kind of taking that niche approach versus like the really wide aggregating a market, being the Expedia for that market. So I would say like learning from maybe even some of our own pain points. And then when I joined the C2 group, we were like 80. I just noticed 80% of our business was with a platform called Optimizely, which is like one of the largest enterprise content management systems out there. And if you're in digital services, you know that it's an extremely competitive marketplace, and lead generation and client acquisition is like the biggest challenge for almost every agency. So really like niching out, even saying like, this is all we do, this is how we do it, we're experts in this product. It provided a huge increase in revenue and in deal flow because we became trusted by their sales team. So it was like building an external sales team that had a $20 million marketing budget versus my like $200,000 agency marketing budget. And it was about relationship building then. And so you could really lean in and become an expert in the product, the service, and they'd understand that, as an agency partner, you were going to go sell Sitecore or sell Adobe or something like that. You were committed to co-selling and winning the work with the team member. So that I saw was very successful. And then I've taken that even to GTU with our approaches in multi-location brands. So we serve franchises, and as a result, we've deepened our relationship with those multi-location brands, elevated into like the private equity groups that own 15 different brands, and it's created extraordinary growth for the business as a result. And so I think like, a lot of times when we go so wide, because we're trying to service maybe everybody in your geographic area, that's the first thing people will think about is like, I have to serve, anybody that comes to me with an opportunity, I have to serve that. And the reality is you can't be an expert at all those things. So becoming an expert makes you so much more valuable to somebody that's searching for that. So I would say that's my one of my biggest learnings in business to date.
Maybe take that down a level, though. I mean, I guess some of the stuff that you imply in this is there's way more context the narrower you get, right? And so you've said this kind of in a couple of your comments just before, where it's like being a trusted advisor, meaning going deeper and understanding their business well enough to serve them, instead of being kind of horizontally and an inch deep across a whole bunch of them. You understand the personas that you're selling to, the buying pressures, the value proposition that they're doing. And so all of that basically just sharpens what you can do. And basically your chances of converting those people into paying customers just goes up. And I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but it's like, I think that's like, you talked about a lot of the outcomes, but I think the mechanics of that is really kind of what people need to hear.
I think it's about qualifying you in the room to have a conversation. Like that is the thing that most businesses struggle with, is getting the opportunities to get in the room with the right customer. And they need to know, the customer needs to know that you're qualified to have the conversation with them. So by positioning yourself within that niche as an expert, you break down a lot of those barriers of, are you qualified? Am I wasting my time? Are you the right person to do the job at the end of the day? And so I think, and if we were going to put numbers behind it, it's just purely cost of acquiring a customer, right? If you can limit your reps to the most qualified, and then you're going to have a higher conversion rate. because you've already done the work to make sure that you both deserve to be in the same room together.
Yeah.
And it goes both ways, right?
It does. No question about it. Yeah. One of the things I didn't hear in kind of your intro, and maybe I missed it, but like I was looking at some of your background and stuff, and I think you did some customer acquisition work for Chewy before it was actually Chewy. Is that true or no?
Yeah. I didn't personally. My business partner at Rev did,
Oh, okay.
and he was employee number 6 at Chewy, Mr. Chewy. Was what they were called.
Okay.
And we brought a lot of those experiences to the startup, the startups we were working with, because his experience sitting next to Blake and Ryan, who were the 2 co-founders of Chewy, they exited for $3.35 billion. Ryan has become this like huge investor now.
That's awesome.
He was, if you watch the GameStop movie, he's featured in that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he's an activist, like chairman of the board for GameStop, and the whole like trading deal of their stock going wild or whatever. So he was kind of behind some of that. Wow. But yeah, so having Brent is my business partner, and he's we've been business partners for over a decade, and he has brought a lot of those experiences, and I obviously talk fluently about that, and our team is understands that culture of what it took to build something like that.
Yep.
And the risk those guys took right out of the gates. It was, they had exited another company and they put every penny they had into building Chewy.
Burn the bridge.
Yeah. And it was not a small number. It was
I'm sure
$12 million. They
all in.
Yeah. So yeah.
3.3 billion though. That's a pretty good return on that.
They did it with no venture capital. They had a PE fund come in right at the end, but they owned like 76% of the company or something like that at exit.
Wow.
So
that's amazing.
Yeah, unfortunately, Brent didn't negotiate any equity shares though as employee number 6. So I've talked, like, that's an unfortunate part of the story. Like, I think as a founder, and of course, like, they need to be with you for the long haul, but you really should build in incentives for the team that's helping you bring this, get it off the ground, put it on vesting, 4-year vesting. Yeah. But yeah, there should be an incentive pool for those early stage employees.
Yeah, no question. Well, let's maybe talk a little bit about maybe the first thing that I think you and I kind of connected on was your move from Seattle to Spearfish. And so, I had basically made a similar move. I worked for Concur for a number of years, and I was based in Redmond and then Bellevue, and then, moved back to the Black Hills. You basically did it with Camp Native, a VC-backed company, and, moving to South Dakota. So maybe talk to me a little bit about the impetus to doing that. What the VCs end up saying, and like, how did that all go?
Yeah. I was in West Seattle. I was working with 9 Mile Labs. They were, downtown Seattle. We went through the accelerator there. And we had raised from an angel group in Seattle, but we also had, a few folks in South Dakota. And this all happened, after we made the move, but we had validation from the angels in Seattle, and then we had a venture partner in Minnesota that was coming on board. I had reached out, so going back, I'd been from Spearfish, and I just thought, I went to school there, and I thought, man, this is like such a cool, like, top 10 outdoors town in the U.S. I think they had just made, like, 2014 made a list of that or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking, building an outdoors company startup in a place where we, our culture is we do what we are building. And I thought that was a unique approach versus, just doing what everybody else was doing. And so I initially reached out to the economic development director. Brian Walker was his name back then. I think there's a new one now, but Brian and I worked together on Atlas had just hit, which if you're from the area, you know what that was. It
Yeah,
was
big storm. Yep.
some big storm that collapsed all these roofs. And anyways, the EDC had collected a bunch of insurance money from Atlas, so my timing was a bit
Perfect.
serendipitous because they had cash to burn on guys like me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't big. It was like they gave me like a $25,000 grant for to set up an office there, but it was enough to say to the VCs like, hey, this is the local economic development. Here's the culture and what I want to build here, and they backed it. So we ended up moving there. I think it was October 2015, and we were there for 7 years. Created over 20 jobs in Spearfish. I think our local impact on just salaries and revenue and outside income that came in, because we built multiple companies, agency work. I factored it to be around $10 million for that little $25,000
Pretty good
investment that the EDC made to bring us there. And I actually never intended to really leave. We were very, very happy there. It was, but I think I had hit a plateau in my own career as far as I could go with things there. Was dealing with some burnout. Had this opportunity with the C2 group, and it was a chance to like sort of reset for a minute. So yeah, I think like the move was super positive. I would do it again 100 out of 100 times. In fact, I had a conversation while I was at Enterprise Rising last week with a fund out of Sioux Falls, and he asked me, the principal that was there that was talking to me, he said, "Would you move to South Dakota again if we funded Grow Army?" And I said, "Don't twist my arm. Yeah, like I'll be like, let me know." So,
So is that
so we meet up
Stover?
on Monday.
Who was that? Was it Stover or who was that?
Lucas was his name.
Lucas. Yeah.
Yeah.
Haskins.
Yeah, Lucas Haskins. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Small
You
world.
know.
I
Yeah.
do know. Yeah, I know the whole group. And Mark Stover.
Yeah.
Maybe go backwards though. Like if you had stayed in Seattle, do you think the outcome would have been any different, or do you think it was just a quality of life, or do you think like the people you were able to attract because of the kind of culture that you were building made it unique there?
I think we might have had a different approach and outcome. Yes. I think back then I maybe didn't have the framework that I have now on how to build and how to bring a startup like that to market appropriately. I sort of was brute forcing it with call center outbound sales approach versus like more of a marketing approach. And I think I would have maybe had some different advice from folks in that market that had taken software products. So yeah, I do think like back then, maybe the outcome of the business might have changed, or it could have been potentially improved. Quality of life and culture for me is like we're only on this earth for so long, and so I wouldn't change it what I did, even if the outcomes were significantly different, just because it was the most amazing. Like my two kids were born at the Spearfish Hospital. I got to walk my kids to preschool every day, and it was just like this wonderful lifestyle of living there. We called it station vacation.
Yeah.
So
well, that's good. I mean, I think I appreciate the honesty. And maybe the next one is talking a little bit, you've already broached it a couple times in this conversation, just talking about burnout. I think you said you kind of had severe burnout and somewhere in the 2022, somewhere in there. You kind of had a slog. I mean, it was like 14 years of just continuously founding companies and building. And you took some time off and then basically kind of started to regroup. And so, I think there's a perception externally that like some of that could be viewed as failure, right? I don't think we talk about mental health. I don't think we talk about burnout. I don't think we talk about stress. We see it all the time with our founders, right? We're starting to get way more active in helping them manage it because we've seen people like good ideas, teams burn out, not enough support, just all sorts of combinations, which you've well experienced. And so maybe talk to me a little bit about what that really, like, what did burnout really look like for you? And then how did you make a decision that's saying, perceptions be damned, I'm going to take care of myself and rebuild?
Yeah, I think it's I think you need to surround yourself with good people that can be honest with you, because as entrepreneurs, and I'm an endurance athlete too. I've learned I don't know which one teaches me more about dealing with pain, but you deal with pain constantly, and so you learn to tolerate it to a point where you start to become numb to it, and you're not recognizing that maybe physically or mentally you're breaking down. Maybe you're not making the best decisions anymore. I never really had the operating framework. I think I arguably am, maybe in the 1 percentile of people that can go 0 to 1, take an idea, get revenue behind it, launch it, because I've done it so many times, just got a lot of reps under my belt. But going beyond that was always my challenge. I would get to a point and hit the ceiling and not, maybe pivot too quickly or not push through in the right, the right roadblocks or whatever. I look at a roadblock and just try to take the detour or whatever, versus how do we, step back and think about this, or do we have the right people in the right seat, or do we have the right tools inside the organization? Some of those things. So for me, the wake up call was I was launching another startup in 2022, which launched. It's called YakDAO. I didn't actually talk about that one here, but it's live today. We built one of the first decentralized autonomous organizations that runs a glamping resort. So we have over 1,000 global investors in a glamping resort in North Carolina. And we were going to tokenize this, bring it to market. The crypto market was crashing at this time. So we had a bunch of traction, and it was retracting on us due to the market conditions. And my wife, I had not made a resume. I hadn't applied for a position since 2004. And she made a resume and sent it out to like a handful of places. And I was traveling, and I got a phone call that said, you have an interview in 30 minutes. And I'm like, what?
I say, what?
So that was like a wake up call. Like, I had this interview, and then I was like, okay, like if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it like strategically. And then I ended up, going through this and finding the C2, and we did this because at that point I knew like she was at the end of her rope on like dealing with, like, my behavior was not okay in our relationship, and it wasn't that I was maybe doing anything disruptive, other than she couldn't deal with the starts and stops. So, and that's financially, that's you're on this like hamster wheel of starting and stopping all the time, and insecurity, and so at that point I had 3 young kids. We'd been married a decade or whatever it was, and it was like, okay, there's other people in my life that I have to pay attention to. And it's the best thing I've done, because through that experience, I was able to learn enterprise. I was able to learn an operating system that I'm now building a startup around. And I was really able to have mentorship that I didn't have before, because I took a break. I took a break, and I did it intentionally in a way that it was like I was going to commit to it for 3 years, and I did, because I wanted once I knew like this was the right thing to do, and it was a break of like stepping away from constantly the ups and downs. I think Somebody I was talking to last week at Enterprise Rising said, I said, oh, like startups are like a roller coaster, the ups and downs. And he said, it's not. It's literally simultaneously up and down, self-doubt and confidence in the same conversation, like at the same time. And that's so disruptive to your nervous system, actually, like physiologically and mentally dealing with that every day of, am I doing the right thing? Am I taking the right approach here? And so creating a framework, an operating system around how to handle that and how to handle decisions inside your business. It was restrictive at first when I was introduced to that operating system, and then it became, I don't know how I operated a business without this before. So, and now how do I improve it? So.
Go back a little bit though. Like I don't want to press too hard, but I guess like what is the day-to-day burnout look for? Like you talked about like the highs and lows happening at the same time. You talk about not having a framework, but like emotionally, like I think we kind of whitewash this a little bit. And like I mean I'll give some examples. I mean like you see people that are super sharp at like executing on stuff, and then they just start to drift off. I mean they get depressed. You see other people wanting to focus on the wrong things. They're not taking good advice anymore. There's a litany, something happens in your life. We had somebody that basically had a relationship fall apart, and he just went dark and he had the keys to everything for a developer, as a developer. And so like, I guess to bring some of this to light and not whitewash it, like what are some of the symptoms for you that just like drove you to like, and your wife to help you make a different decision?
Yeah, I think what you're hitting on is like natural human behavior, fight or flight, and whenever we're faced with challenges, those are the two things that we do. And I think for me it was a bit of both of those, like fight, but in a way that maybe I was just creating new things too fast, not seeing things through, pivoting too quickly. Always starting something, but maybe not necessarily finishing it. Mm-hmm. And then that also is flight, right? You're looking at, but I didn't get traction in 4 weeks, so I'm going to quit doing this and go do something else or whatever. And maybe didn't turn over enough stones or talk to the right people or put the right systems in place to make sure that it wasn't a valid concept or strategy. But yeah, I mean, like, to be really honest, it was, I got to a point where I think the only thing on my calendar was haircuts for a little while.
That's pretty good. That's a change, I'm sure.
Yeah, I was like, no, but I mean, like, while I was running a business, I was just like, I don't want to talk to people, so I'm going to let everybody else talk to people.
I see.
And I just didn't want to, so it was
engage.
Like, yeah, I didn't want to engage. I was pretty heavy into the blockchain thing back in like from, when COVID hit. I got very invested in it, and like we were doing seminars around South Dakota for blockchain actually. Mm-hmm. And so and then I was like actively trading. So there was like 18 hours a day sometimes where I was like candle watching on top of trying to run my business. So
day to day. Yeah.
I think that was probably played heavily into my burnout of just that constant dopamine hits. And then, I randomly would find myself at, lunch at Killian's Tavern, with 3 IPAs in, and it's 12:30. Yeah. So I started asking myself, like, hey, this isn't a very healthy lifestyle, Yeah. So for me, like the biggest, like if you're an entrepreneur, I think healthy outlets are critical. If it's all you do, that's cool. Like you can be, I think every company takes a certain level of unbalance to really be successful out of the gates.
Totally agree.
But it's not sustainable, and you have to recognize that. So if you don't build a system to offload some of that, like you're 100% guaranteed to burn out. and having healthy outlets versus like maybe outlets that aren't so healthy, like, happy hours and drinking too much or whatever it might be. For me, the healthy outlet was riding my bike, and I became a very competitive cyclist, got really fit. It actually taught me a ton about business and about myself personally. I think on my LinkedIn, I talk maybe half about riding bikes and half about business, because it is like such a big thing for me, of like culture. It changed my life. And it's something I do with my family, with friends. And the training process of being competitive is very similar to what you do in business, and it has to do with consistency. That's the number one thing.
Yep.
Is be consistent, but be consistent in like putting those gaps in your life to like invest in yourself, because if you're not healthy, your business isn't going to be healthy. Plain and simple. Like, if you're not in a good place physically, mentally, you can't run a successful business.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I think I always look at it as kind of, you need some avenue to recharge, right? And so whether it's biking or whether it's downtime, everybody's different. But like, if you can't find some of that, and I would say for me personally, like, I know that like I would schedule so much meetings back to back to back to back without any time. And, like, I just became a dull crayon, right? I wasn't very creative. I basically just marching through the things, and I just got burned out so hard. And I had a kind of a career at Concur where it's like, I'd do a job for 3 or 4 years and then I'd move on to something different. And it just took me a while to figure out you need some white space in there. And white space made me more creative. It made me an opportunity to continue to learn. And I was a better employee and a better entrepreneur over time. But like, I needed to learn how to work and how my body worked. And so it's a process.
100%. I learned this interesting. There's a theory that the human brain can't concentrate on something for more than 45 minutes. So if you take, again, like an exercise, the HIIT, everybody knows like HIIT exercise, high intensity interval training.
Yep.
You can do some, if you apply that to your work, it's like 45-minute sessions. Maybe you do 3 or 4 a day. And if you were just really intentional about executing against those, it would be amazing how much work you can get done versus like just sitting at a desk for 8 to 10 hours staring at a screen.
Yep. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I think these kind of short, high intensity focused areas, and then give yourself some time and permission to go off and do some other things. I think it's a really good way to think about it. You've talked about, you've met a mentor at Techstars. You talked about Generator, 9 Miles Labs. You talked about a bunch of them. And you've kind of sat on both sides of the table, right? You've gone through some of these programs and then you've helped out them. What do those guys get right? What do they get wrong? And like, this landscape that I play in today has changed dramatically compared to maybe when you started. And so like, maybe just give me an overview of kind of how you think about those programs, and what people should be looking for today.
Yeah, I think for me, that it was like really effective on the first time I went through a program. I think it was 2014, and it was like getting an MBA in startups, is the way I looked at it. I was there for 3 months. I was in Little Rock, Arkansas, at the ARC Challenge. Was the first one I went through, and then I think that I would say the framework, the learnings, and the networking are like, the networking's really important, because I think in our culture today, a lot of us build stuff from our house. Yeah. And so if you're not like intentional about going out and meeting people or networking events, and I'm a bit of an introvert, so like those networking events can feel pretty painful and exhausting to me. Yep. But when I get to them, I'm really effective at it. I tend to like want to avoid them for whatever reason. And so I think a lot of entrepreneurs are that way. Like, you can get there and you can talk about stuff, but is it something you really want to do? Not really. You'd rather, build and send out whatever 700 emails and hope that 10 people contact you on the internet.
Right.
So, but I think like the network effect was the biggest value that I had in every one of those. Like pretty much every investor that has ever invested in my business has come through like networking with accelerators or their networks, because you don't run in those circles all the time as a builder, right? Yeah. So I think those are probably the pros. I think the cons are it's become a little bit cookie cutter, or it did become a little bit cookie cutter. There's a lot of volume around it, so there's not as much maybe. And I think also like startups come into it with most of the time a sole purpose of like raising money as the outcome, and like false expectations of like what it actually takes to execute a raise and how fast that's going to happen. So I think like your approach and your style is much like, and especially as things have changed, like it's become way less capital intensive to build a company and validate it and bring it to market. It's more about right tools, right people, right, ICP, ideal customer profile, niche, all of those things. Like if you can get that right in a short period of time and get validation, and get, validation being revenue, you end up being in a much more commanding position as a founder to raise money if you want to. And then there's alternatives. You can raise money without equity, or you can self-fund the company, or pay yourself out of the revenue that you're bringing in. So it just creates a lot of options versus, I think 10 years ago, if you weren't a technical founder, you almost had to go raise or invest a significant amount of capital to build something.
Yeah, that's totally true. I mean, I think that's totally changed. And I guess one of the other premises that I didn't really talk to you about before we kicked off was we look for a lot of people that have deep domain expertise. So they don't really necessarily think of themselves as a founder. But like this, like I was just talking to a founder that was like a civil engineer, and he knew like this detailed issue about like wastewater and, how the Department of Natural Resources manages construction when there's, high rains. And it's like the process is just a mess. But like, again, AI is bringing that cost down to like bring that to market. But that domain expertise is not sitting in an LLM somewhere. It's in that gentleman's head. And you think about, nurses, and you think about all these other people that have experiences and they know something can be better. Those make pretty interesting opportunities, I think, in today's day and age because of the cost to get something to market so much cheaper. Right.
Yeah, it's and I mean, we're talking like the last 12 months.
Yeah.
So
and this is the worst it's going to be. That's the crazy thing, right?
Yeah,
you think about like how much it's gotten better in the last 3 years, right? Compared to where we are today. What's going to be like in another 3 years? I
mean, when a guy like me can start banging out websites, it's getting kind of dangerous. So
yeah, I'm with you. Like I'm writing, I'm building apps anymore. It's like it's been a long time since I've actually coded anything. So yeah, it's kind of crazy. Let's see where to go next. Maybe like just talk to me a little bit about like when you think about your just journey as a whole, right? I mean, you've kind of had these like kind of epochs. Like, what do you think the culmination of that is? Like, and maybe go back to like, let's just put it in the context of, somebody's listening to this, they're a founder, they're kind of been through the slog, and they're tired. And, like a lot of things, they're questioning whether I'm keep going and doing this. Like if you had to go back to that individual, say your 25-year-old self, what would you tell her? What would you tell them? What have you learned over your time that you would go back and give to an early stage founder?
Yeah, I think, man, that's a tough one because it's, there are things I would change and there's things I wouldn't change. Like the experiences I wouldn't change. I think investing like under the framework and how you operate, and that to me, understanding that, having a framework and having and knowing the data to help you make decisions, because a lot of this burnout is from decision fatigue. We don't know what to do. You're at a crossroads, and you're faced with, do I do this or do I do that? Do I take this consulting gig, and sell some of my time so that I can continue funding this startup idea I have? Do I, live on my buddy's couch for another month while I'm trying to bring this to market? And so, those are like decision fatigue, hard decisions that we're faced with all the time. And I think if you're using the right tools to validate your product, your go-to-market, and see that you have traction, customer interviews, like you have to be talking to your customer, because if you can see that, then it becomes a lot easier to invest, I think, at this stage of the game. For me, I think going back, I don't think we had all those tools, over 10, 15, whatever years ago.
Nobody does when they start.
Right. And so you're kind of running blind. You're still running a little bit blind to a point right now, but it's much more accessible. Like I can go run market research with Manus, and it can give me PE level market data on anything I want to run, and I can do it in 20 minutes right now. Yep. So that's accessible to everybody, and that's just knowing what tools to use, right? So I think leaning into that first, like know your data, know your customer, and then I mean I would say it's worth it. Like if you have a vision and a dream, but you really have to want it, and you have to like the lifestyle. If you don't like the lifestyle, then what are you doing it for? Like ask yourself that question.
Meaning grind? Just the grind of doing it? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because there's a lot of things you could do with your life. And nobody, at the end of the day, nobody really cares what you do. It's your time, how you spend it, and how you invest it. And, that's the most important thing. So if there's things in life that are satisfying to you, and you're I always say, like, for me, my mentality is there's no growth in the comfort zone. So if I get comfortable, I get a little bit like, oh boy,
twitchy.
But not everybody's that way. Like the majority of people are not that way.
Not that way. No, I'm with you.
So maybe if you are that way though, then maybe being a founder is not the right avenue for you. And ask yourself why you're doing it. Are you trying to impress somebody? Are you trying to prove something? And those are never good reasons to like stay in something. You have to be passionate about what you're doing, why you're doing it, and you have to actually like the grind, the training, the effort. And if you don't enjoy that, it never changes. You can't outwork it. You can't outgrow the business. I remember somebody saying, "Man, I just wish I could be an entrepreneur because I'd have so much more free time."
It's not true.
And it's not true at all.
Not true.
And you can't really until you were to build a company with multiple layers of like executive management. Yes, maybe then you could. But until that, you're talking, 100 plus headcount. You got to get to that. And even at that point, you got a district manager that quits. You got a COO that retires. Guess who that falls back on? Yep. So I mean it's you're always in the Coast Guard. It's semper paratus, always ready, right? That's what you have to do as an entrepreneur, always ready.
Yep.
For any job.
Yeah.
So I think it's understanding what you signed up for, because I think most people have a misunderstanding of what they've signed up for and what they're committing to.
Yeah, it's not for everybody. Well, David, this has been great. I really appreciate your time. If people wanted to follow you online or learn more about what you're doing, what's the best way to do that?
So my LinkedIn is just David N. Woodbury, and then I've made a consistent, basically a goal to consistently post stuff about growth and my experiences there. I've been pretty inconsistent with it in the past, and I'm just trying to be consistent with it now. As I'm building a growth startup and framework, operating framework, some of the stuff I've talked about today, I'm building that into a software to help early stage companies run, and that's called Grow.Army.
Okay.
And so I'm bringing that to market here in the next 2-3 months.
Awesome. Well, good. Well, thanks a lot for sharing your insights and experiences, and we'll look forward to seeing how the next one goes.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Todd. Appreciate the time.
Thanks for listening to Startup Stories from the Treehouse. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like, follow, or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you found our conversation helpful, leave a review. It really helps other founders discover our shows. For more insight and episode summaries, don't forget to subscribe to the Wildfire Lab Substack. We appreciate your support and can't wait to share more stories with you next time.